The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television.
Thanks for watching Compass here on Pioneer Public Television. Welcome to the show. This is a look at public issues facing western Minnesota, the eastern Dakotas, and northwestern Iowa. And so this week we're going to talk about something we haven't talked about on the show yet, and that is soils. Soil research is very important in an agricultural area, but many people don't know all of the aspects that there are to soils or how some things are changing with soil erosion. Here's a story and a local look from Pioneer's Laura K. Prosser.
Since 1991, Brian Farr of Lamberton, Minnesota, has been working on conservation efforts throughout his 500 acres of conservation land.
I was concerned about the soil loss that was occurring out in the fields, and we have different soil types here in Redwood County, in the southern part of Redwood County, and I wanted a way to be able to protect those soils from blowing and the erosion that was occurring. So I was coming up with different methods to use and try out in the field. One of the things that I've been trying now is doing different crop rotations, and also doing the cover crops, incorporating cover crops into the soil types that need it the most. Well, the first step I had to do is I had to figure out where I was going to place it and where the crop rotation was going to be best fit into the system. In this situation that we're looking at here, my focus was on the erosion part of it, the wind erosion, and the soil compaction and the soil fertility. So what I've used in this situation is I used a concoction of 5 different species. There's radishes, rye, rape, turnips, barley is in this mix also. So I try to target the species that'll kind of give me everything that I want all in one seeding. The whole key is to get that organic matter level up and to hold the moisture in the soil. This field here, it was very depleted, and I wanted to get that back up so when it rained, it stayed right where the rain hit and went into the soil profile.
However, Brian was finding other benefits as well. Benefits that became his aha moment.
The cover crops was planted after wheat, and we just let it go. And then in the same field, on the other end of this field, is we left it grow, and then we released the cattle into it. So I'm seeing the benefits of how much residue is going to be left over in the spring, if that's going to be a problem with planting. And then I'll see where the cattle had grazed, if the removal of the residue made it easier to work with in the spring. A few of the results that I had seen working with this, there is one moment for me that I had seen where we did cover crops and the reduced tillage. I was out digging some holes, I was going to plant some trees, and I dug down and found one scoop. I found 13 worms in one scoop of dirt. And I went 100 feet away on the same farm, same soil type, everything, and it was tilled. It was conventionally tilled. I had to dig 3 holes to find one worm. So just by opening that soil up and seeing all the, the organic matter that was in there, all the organisms that were living in the soil, to me that was an instant, that was going to start working for me. That is a healthy soil is with all the organisms in it.
Even with obvious results, Farr still has reserves when recommending similar efforts on other people's farms.
The tips that I would say is know what your goal is, why to plant the cover crops, if it's for the wind erosion, if it's for the organic matter, and a lot of those things go hand in hand. So you're going to accomplish more than one thing by planting the cover crops. I would highly encourage anybody that was going to do this to start at a small scale to see if it's going to work for you. I've seen different people in the past where they did a large scale situation, and if it did not work, they were very discouraged by it. And with the state and local governments, there's different programs that are available to help them, and they would be the best spot to stop into and visit with them, because this is not going to work in every situation, but those erosive fields with the wind erosion and things like that, for me it's been a benefit, but I would highly recommend that they work with people.
People like Marilyn Bernhardson, director of the Redwood Soil and Water Conservation District, would be one of those people who are in the know.
Districts have many tools in the toolbox that we work with farmers on to implement conservation practices. Everything from the state cost share program to providing technical services to the CRP, RIM, CREP. Brian has land in CRP. CRP is a conservation reserve program, and what they do is they retire their land and put it, typically it's in a grass program, it can be a wetland program or a tree planting. So what it basically does is take cropland out of production for a contracted period of like 10 or 15 years. Brian also has, I think, wetland restorations and buffer strips in RIM program. And the difference between the CRP and the RIM is a permanent program. What we do is we retire land permanently, so if they want to do something, they can just contact our office and we can figure out some way to help them with their program.
Conservation is always tricky, but programs like these and people like Marilyn and Brian are trying to get people to understand why it's important for others to join them in their conservation efforts.
We know that there are controversial issues dealing with the buffer law and with the soil loss limits. However, we're hoping that people understand the importance of doing and participating in programs that are going to preserve the land and to restore the land and to make the land better.
I just know, watching my fields and watching fields around me, I just wanted to be able to do what I could to stop the erosion. When I drive down the road on a really windy day and I drive by my field and the soil's not moving, that's a huge benefit to me. I hope that people see it as that I'm doing a good thing, keeping the soil on the land where it's at, not moving around. Because we have a lot of wind out here, and it's just nice to see the fields that we have not blowing around.
We now have a couple of guests in our studio here at Pioneer Public Television to talk about some of the aspects of soils. I'm happy to have with me Terry Whitnable, and Abdullah Jaradat. So, Terry, Abdullah, thank you for coming. Terry, tell us a little bit about what you do.
I work for the Lac qui Parle Soil and Water Conservation District. There is a soil and water conservation district in every county, well, nearly every county, in every state in the country as well as the U.S. territories. What we do is we work with private landowners to help protect their resources according to the resources of the location. Yeah. And so it's protecting the resources, soil and water, on private lands.
And we should add, for people who are not familiar with the viewing area geography, that your office is in Lac qui Parle County. That's about 150 miles west of the Twin Cities.
Yes, it is, right on the South Dakota border.
Okay. And Abdullah, I know we have spoken before informally, and you're in Morris, Minnesota, also in west central Minnesota. And tell us what you do at the Soils Lab.
Correct. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I work for the Agricultural Research Service in Morris, Minnesota, and the research lab, nicknamed Soils Lab, and that implies the importance of soils in this part of the state and the country. The Soils Lab is one of about 90 research laboratories which belong to USDA, Agricultural Research Service, and we are the in-house research arm of USDA. We do research mainly on soils and water, crops and crop rotations, cropping systems. I used to joke that we do almost everything except cows, but recently we are collaborating with our colleagues at the West Central Research and WC-ROC. Yeah. We are collaborating on animal research, livestock, and the interaction between crops, soils, water, and animals.
Okay, great. Well, thanks to both of you for coming in. There are so many areas we can go in this topic, and there's been a lot of attention paid lately to things like buffer strips that we'll hopefully cover some in another show. But why is there so much attention right now about soils and soil erosion? Terry, I'll start with you. Is this in part because of the new law in the state?
I think it is bringing it to more prominence. Actually, Minnesota passed a law in 1984, a soil erosion law, that simply encouraged local government units to pass an ordinance. In 1994, there was a model ordinance. There were 5 counties that added soil erosion to their zoning ordinances, but none actually passed a county ordinance regarding soil erosion. And coming from an ag county, soil and soil erosion has always been one of our primary concerns.
Sure. And so what happens is you end up helping a lot of folks who come into the office and say, I think I've got an issue, or I don't want to have an issue on soil erosion, so then you work with them in figuring out how to help solve, on a case-by-case basis, many of the issues, right?
Exactly. We provide the technical assistance, and as we're able, some cost share assistance through grants or other programs to help them install whatever the practice might be. Sometimes it's something very simple, like having to do with residue management, and other times it's engineered constructed practices.
Sure. And again, we talked about how soils don't get as much attention as, say, water quality or those things, but all of these things are linked, and sometimes it's a matter of what people can see, right? People drive down the road, they may see soils blowing, or they may see soil in the ditch, and those are the kind of things that start getting people's attention about soils. But now, AJ, I know in your work, you've dedicated your life to this research on soils, and what is it you say, that soils are us, really? It's a sort of a deep personal thing?
Literally and figuratively, soils are us, and soils, if I may put it this way, are non-renewable resource. If you look at the history of soils, these soils took thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years to be developed, and we are trying to manage these soils in the best possible way and advocate the importance of soils and how to manage them, how to rotate crops and animal husbandry on these soils so that they stay productive. If I may add to this, the fact that soil erosion is a natural ongoing process, and we don't notice it, as you just mentioned, by passing by. Wind, water, even tillage causes soil erosion and the loss of fertile land, the topsoil. And this is why we say that soils are us. If they are lost, we lose our livelihood. Civilizations have been lost by the loss of soils.
Sure, yeah. And when we think about some of the aspects of soils, I know we've talked about during the break a bit about research, and of course research can often be very difficult to understand, but I know there's some exciting things going on right now in learning about what we can do with soils, right, at your lab and also throughout all of USDA.
Correct. The research portfolio at the Soils Lab includes not only soils, but their interaction with the environment, the climate, with the climate change as it is upon us, and their interaction with crops and crop rotations, cropping systems, whether we call them conventional cropping systems or organic cropping systems, and their interaction with the animal component of agricultural production. Recently, ARS came up with a very challenging idea, and that instead of looking at short-term impact or effects of soil management and soil use, which may be very valuable, but instead we started looking at the long-term effects, and that is under the umbrella of long-term agroecosystems research. And Morris, as part of ARS, we are a part of the Upper Mississippi River Basin Network, because we are in one of the areas which are very sensitive for soil erosion and sediments and nutrient loss to the waterways going down to the Mississippi, and as you know, the hypoxia region down in the Gulf.
Yeah, and when you talk about ARS, that's the Agricultural Research Service, which is a division of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, right? Okay. Terry, I know we talked a bit about the fact that some of these soils laws have changed over time. There was the 1984 law, which was more of a suggestion in a sense and got things rolling, and now we have a more recent law. What is it that people should know about some of these law changes and how it might affect them or their farm or their backyard or their property? What are some of the things that people you think should know?
I think the main thing that they should know is that we don't have the rules just yet. Because once again, all of the focus is going to water. So all the focus right now on developing rules has to do with the buffer part of the law, buffer being what's named first. So this is going to come soon. Well, is a year soon? I'm not sure. We don't know. But I think it will be very helpful to whether you're a private landowner or you live in a city or have a construction company, whatever your perspective is, it will be helpful to have the same law apply across the board instead of county ordinances that might be different from location to location. For instance, if you were a farmer, you might have, in that case, land that you're operating in more than one county. The ordinances would be different, and so it makes it more difficult to comply. So this way now we should have something set that we know what the rules are, and it will be easier to provide assistance then to individuals and help them find cost share if necessary to implement any best management practices.
And that's one of those things where, not to get too deep into the bureaucraties of this, but a lot of people don't necessarily think about the fact that after a law is passed, and this is true of the Wetlands Act in Minnesota or many others, then there is a layer beyond that, which is the rulemaking process.
Yes.
And people may want to go in and over answers, but it can take time there's a rulemaking defined process, how long it takes. So, just getting the answers to figure these things out can take a long time. People need to be patient.
Exactly.
Yeah. But at the end of it, the idea is reduced soil erosion.
Absolutely. Yeah. And soil erosion, reducing that soil erosion is going to benefit water quality, whether it's erosion by water or erosion by wind. And I think that understanding of the impact on water quality of wind erosion is the most difficult for people to grasp, because they cannot see that water move, or that soil moving in the air and then actually going into a body of water. And they don't stop to think that soil that has been blown off a field into a road ditch then is going to be carried by water into a surface water. So,
AJ, I saw you nodding during that. So obviously this is something you've run across in your work.
Sure, that is that's a very important component of the research, but I would like to add to what you just said in terms of water and wind erosion. Tillage erosion is something which many people even didn't think of it or do not see. But in fact, tillage erosion using the traditional moldboard plow, which dislodges the soil and moves it as you move, especially on steep soils and from top hills down to the bottom, you are moving, or farmers are moving tons and tons of soil every year, every time they go and plow. And this is very important in terms of soil conservation and exposing the soil to both wind and water erosion.
and going back to the law, coming from an ag county, I do believe that the perspective of those local commissioners was that farmers were obligated to follow the federal HEL, or highly erodible land component, in the Farm Bill. And why should they make a local control when there was something federal already addressing it? But they're finding out now through the research that the way that the soil loss was measured, or is measured, to be compliant with that federal program is not meeting the water quality goals in Minnesota. And so part of this law is going to be that the soil loss is going to be measured in a different way, a more site-specific way, and it is going to be more of reducing erosion from a site as opposed to what's a tolerable soil loss.
And AJ, is that a big part of where this needs to go, do you think, is really some more of the sort of site-specific understandings that people may be used to generalizations about soil erosion or soil sciences, and some things are general, but that more specific understandings are important?
Definitely it has to be site-specific, simply because we have multitude of soil types, soil series, as you may know. I just give you a small example of an experimental plot in the Swan Lake Research Farm, where we conduct our research. In an area of about 3 hectares, we have 5 soil series. That's tremendous, and these are different in terms of their composition, chemical and physical composition, and their erodibility, the type of clay, and the composition of silt, salt, sand, clay, and all of this contributes to the possibility of erosion, or the soil being exposed to erosion. So site-specific studies and measurements are very necessary to accurately quantify the amount of soil being lost for any one of the 3 kinds of soil erosion.
I know as we get to the closing few minutes here to this discussion, one of the things I've been struck by is that, you know, there is so much information, as we know, about soils, and so much research being done. What are some of the ways that people can sort it out and start to understand, whether it's their own farm or whether it's their own backyard? How can they learn more about what to do, for soil conservation? Because we use the word erosion a lot, and the other side of that is soil conservation. So what can people do to really start learning about what they can do in soil conservation where they live?
Obviously, I would say go to your local soil and water conservation district. Sure. And this is true even in the metro areas, because what you do on your lawn, on your garden, whether your flower garden, is just a miniature version of what farmers do out in the field. And so there are many kinds of practices, many kinds of ways that you can use your land in a conserving way and keep that soil from eroding. I think the Minnesota Extension Service also has a lot of assistance that people can access, but just do a Google search.
Well, I know, and there's also some interesting events too. I know that, for example, AJ, there are events every summer that people put on around soils and soils labs. That's another way that's a more personal way you can go up and learn about it and see it, right?
Incidentally, our field day this coming summer, towards the end of July, will be the theme will be soil and water. So this is an open invitation to the public to come and join us in celebrating our soils and water, and learn how we manage soils and research them to make sure that they stay where they are, simply because we need them for centuries to come, for generations to come, and more important, to learn how the new monitoring and measurements and management research can be applied at farmers' fields and can contribute to soil fertility, soil stability, and higher crop production.
And the open house you're talking about, that's at your facility, which is on just north of Morris, right? Is that where you're going to be?
Correct.
Okay, so
well, there will be 2 things, in fact. In this coming April, on the 7th of April, we will have the meeting of Barnes Osted, the stakeholder of the lab, and it will be on the 7th of April, so everybody is invited. And again in July, that's the field day in Swan Lake Research Farm, where we will have the demonstrations and talks about both soil and water.
Good. Well, Abdullah Durrant and Tori Whitnebel, thank you very much for joining us. And I will mention that, of course, if you are interested in this topic or others that we have here on Compass, here on Pioneer Public Television, we'd welcome you to go to our website, which is pioneer.org. If you've missed any of this program or any previous episodes of anything on Pioneer, Go to our website, pioneer.org. You can watch the shows online or take a look at some of the resources we've talked about on this program. If you have any suggestions, send them to us at yourtv@pioneer.org. Thank you much for watching this episode of Compass.